lab mindset versus we're going to deliver there's a business problem or a customer problem or an opportunity, and we're going to actually deliver an outcome is a different exercise than we need to start using these tools and we're not sure, but we know they're important. So we do want to actually spin up and deploy a machine learning model into production.
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a weekly podcast featuring a rotating panel of co-hosts that all work together in the same company but live in different areas of the world. The discussions cover a wide variety of topics from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others. And there we go. We are recording. So just before you joined, Jason and I were just talking about the whole Houston Astros baseball situation.
Ah, yes. The cheating.
The cheating.
It
So,
continues.
quick question: where are you located? I can't remember when we last talked.
I'm not too far from Fenway Park, actually, as the crow flies, at least. 40
okay.
minute drive, but it's only 2 miles away.
That's right. That's right. You're up in Boston.
Yeah.
So you've seen some of the fallout with that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I'm probably gonna get someone. I'm looking around my windows to see if anyone hears me say this. I don't follow the Red Sox or any organized baseball whatsoever. In fact,
Okay.
I play soccer, but I'm not really a sports watcher. But I got really into soccer a few years ago, so that's kind of more my thing that I do a couple of nights a week. So, but I am aware.
I see you as a number 10.
A number 10. We're pretty ghetto. We don't even have numbered jerseys, but I'm thinking about actually making jerseys for my band. I have a chamber music ensemble / band, and so I'm like, I should get jerseys, like limited edition, up to 20 numbers, something like that. So I need to get a team and a jersey.
Nice. That would be awesome. And that's something that I heard, and I'm like extremely nervous now to talk to Brian. You're a drummer.
That's correct. Yes, I have kind of my two lives, two businesses, two lives. This is something I actually changed in 2020. I used to keep it pretty much on the down low, but since going independent, I've kind of opened up about the fact that I have two careers. So I run Designing for Analytics, which is my product design consulting firm that specializes in data products and analytics and decision support solutions. And then I also work as a professional musician. So I am a percussionist and drummer. That's my original training in school, was actually in music. So I do play with orchestras and Broadway type, touring shows, and then I run a couple ensembles and play in a few bands and just do random gigs and stuff like that. So those are my two lives.
That is amazing. So, I know we just kind of jumped into like the initial random chat that we have to kick things off. So for those listening who are wondering who we're talking to, so Jason and I have a special guest with us this week. We have Brian O'Neill, who's the founder of Designing Analytics and host of the Experiencing Data podcast. So Designing for Analytics is an independent consultancy which helps product leaders and data strategists innovate by applying human-centered design to data science and analytics. So one of the things I'd love for you to tell us is, describe, human-centered design. So, but for over 20 years, Brian has worked with companies like DellEMC, Tripadvisor, Fidelity, JP Chase, and many, many others. So Brian, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here.
So, how did you get into analytics?
That's a good question. So 20 years ago, I moved out here from Arizona here to Boston area. And, at the time I was kind of, again, doing these two jobs. I had my career as a musician, and then I had a day job, and I started out on the startup scene here. And as a web designer, and eventually kind of moved into application and software design as it was moving on to the web. And I kind of found a niche in financial services and information products and services, starting out at actually Lycos, if you remember them. I worked on and kind of ran design for all of the trading and investment type tools that they had. So they had some really early streaming charting tools and stuff like that. So that was kind of my first foray into analytics and data products. And then I did a bunch of financial services work. And then kind of the next big chapter of clients and stuff that I did after I left the employment world and went into consulting. I had some past colleagues who were moving off to other projects, and one of them in particular, always every time he jumped ship, he's a software architect, he would drag me into we had to come and fix this crap, like and he kind of pulled me into this whole world of products for people that manage data centers. And so if you're an IT person and you're managing storage or compute or networking infrastructure, there are a lot of different software tools that you use to keep infrastructure running. And these days, it's, obviously things are moving into the cloud, and so there's a whole movement to obviously reduce the expenditure and tax that's created by using on-premise tools like that. But nevertheless, they still exist, and DellEMC and NetApp and these companies are still building products and hardware and software products. And within those, analytics is a big issue in terms of managing things like storage capacity, performance management. A big one is doing root cause analysis for detecting anomalies and problems with performance, et cetera. And so it's super niche, but that was kind of what I really started realizing that, hey, I've been kind of working in data products and analytics, and I didn't really consciously decide to focus on that until about 4 years ago, just because so much of my work was in this space. But it was primarily with tech companies, and companies are building either SaaS tools or hardware software tools like this that had some type of analytics component, such as on top of an IoT service. And most of them are all struggling with a common theme, which is finding what is the right signal in the noise, and how do you present the signal properly, and how do you map that to what someone's job is or the work that they're doing. There's so much telemetry to work with now, which makes the problem of picking out the goodies more difficult. And so that's kind of what I help my clients with. And I like to work with, both product people have kind of traditionally been my main clients, but I also work with technical people, engineering and data analytics people who don't always have some of the skill sets that are required to natural skill set, I should say, because I think design is something that can be taught. And even if you don't become a designer, I kind of joke about you could become a design nerd with a D at the end of it, and you can learn some of these practices. And it's like, you don't need to be a professional bodybuilder to go to the gym and get something out of it. And if you can just get into the gym and start doing almost anything in the gym, you're probably going to get some type of result out of it. And it may not be the best result possible, and it may not be efficient the way what order you're doing the circuit training and then your cardio or whatever, but you're probably going to get some value if you make a commitment to do some of that. So I try to encourage positive design behaviors with data and analytics teams, and to try to learn what it means to put humans at the center of their work, so that the solutions they build don't fall on the floor or collect dust and sit in the corner, which is, as you guys probably know, is very much the case if you look at a lot of the recent studies over the years from multiple sources, that these big data and it was big data, and it was BI before that, and then it was analytics, and now it's AI and predictive models. A lot of them are failing, and I don't work on the part where it fails because we couldn't get all the right data we needed, and some of these more technical reasons, but it's more the stuff like the business doesn't know what problem it wants to solve. And so, like, give us a serving of AI with a side of a neural net. It's like, what does that mean to a data person, and how do you unpack that request? Because that's a tactic built into a request, and if you put your human-centered design hat on there, you can use techniques to get at what someone actually needs in terms of decision support, and focus on the outcome you want and not the model or thing that you're building. So outcomes over outputs is kind of the goal there. And anyhow, I'm just kind of rambling here, but that's kind of my journey, I guess, so far.
No, that's awesome, and it sounds like a super exciting field to be in. And I have to imagine that your wait list for clients is probably hundreds of miles long, because it seems like for the wider marketplace, when you talk about data products, it was mostly a primary offering, but now it seems like every app we download, every platform that we use has data as a secondary or supporting feature in almost everything that we use, and most of it is not done very well. So I imagine your services are highly in demand.
Well, yeah, I think it's still especially as we move into the AI space and machine learning. So really, these technologies have been around a while. They used to be called predictive analytics or prescriptive analytics, and they're more advanced techniques. And so I think what happens is this is just my feeling, when the new technology first comes out, it's a race to go use the technology at all costs. So you get whatever talent you need to say that you've done something with it. Then something hits the wall, or you spend a ton of money, you don't get any value out of it. And then someone realizes like, oh, wait, if we're still building human in the loop systems, we still need to involve humans in the process of making these things. And while with predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics and models that may have less GUI, there might be less interface that comes out of the end of them, they can still fall flat if people don't trust what went into them, or they don't understand how the prediction is coming up, or they don't understand why they should care about it. It doesn't matter that you used, this new technology or not. And so I think I'm again, I have no data to back this up, but it's a general feeling that we're going to have a period of like lots of just AI for the sake of AI, hope that it sticks, hope some value comes out of it, and then there'll be this rebound, and it's like we're going to realize that if these tools are for humans, we're going to have to get back to what their goals are and what are the outcomes that we want to have and what do the business people need if you're building internal solutions. You can't just go, you can't throw machine learning at everything and expect that you're going to have value created at the other end of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because we work in slightly different spaces, but I've seen that trend happen over and over again since I got into the more traditional, well, non-traditional digital analytics space in the early 2000s. We saw a similar cycle. Everyone had to have an enterprise analytics solution. We don't know why, but we have to have it. Yeah. And then once that was in place, then everyone needs an A/B testing platform. We don't know why, but we have to tell our board that we have it. Yeah. And, we're seeing a similar trend in digital analytics where AI is now the thing. We have to have our personalization programs AI powered. We don't even know what that means, but we have to have it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's natural, and I think it's okay to experiment with some of these technologies, but I think having a lab mindset versus we're going to deliver there's a business problem or a customer problem or an opportunity, and we're going to actually deliver an outcome is a different exercise than we need to start using these tools and we're not sure, but we know they're important. So we do want to actually spin up and deploy a machine learning model into production. That is an engineering exercise to me. It's a data science and engineering exercise, and there may be a valid reason for that, and that's totally not my space to judge that. I think it's when someone has an expectation that there's going to be value deliver, that's where it breaks down, and I don't think those conversations are always happening. I mean, this is why now you guys might know about this whole analytics translator role that McKinsey has been kind of touting, and I hate the name. I think data product manager is probably a better name for this, but it's realizing that companies that are trying to use data internally to improve their services and offerings or internal processes or whatever, this person that sits at the intersection of ensuring that a business outcome was delivered, some value was delivered, they can interface with the IT and software engineering and the analytics people. There seems to be a gap there, and I think some senior data people can take that on The jury's out. I've heard two perspectives on this from International Institute for Analytics, and I tend to be on the same page about this, that they feel like, if you keep thinking that it's the business's job to hand you a finely tuned problem to go out and solve that's just ready for you to go off and write code and do modeling against, you're going to be out of a job in a couple of years, because they don't know what's possible and they don't always know what to do. And so they're looking for the data science people and the skilled analytics and data strategy people to help them figure out, what should we be doing? What should we be looking at? Your role is not just to execute, but it's also to help figure out, where should we deploy resources? What strategically could we do here? And so I think design can help with some of this bridging, and it's like a glue between all these things. I mean, in tech companies, you hear this, the power trio, as I call it: the product management, your technical leader, which could be someone in analytics or software engineering, and then your product design, and they each kind of tug at each other. One's focused on overall business value, the one's focused on feasibility, and the designers are always championing what's right for the end user and for the business. And so there's this nice tug there. And I feel like there's only two of those, and a lot of internal businesses, they're missing that. They're missing one of those roles sometimes, and so that's why we have potentially some of these failures. That not some, but quite a few of these failures. What do I do with this data? Thank you for this thing you gave me, or you built it without involving the sales team, and you said we can predict which people you should call this week. I mean, I use this example all the time, and it's like, here are the 10 people that we think will close this week, so focus your efforts on that. And the sales guy, like, screw you, man. Like, I know this guy. I'm in Florida this week. I'm going to call. I feel like this guy is going to buy at some point. I have no idea how you came up with this list. I have never talked to these people before, and you're telling me I should be charging them this price? Like, you may be totally right. Like, the model may be right. Like, there may be a strong correlation that those people are going to buy, and the pricing predictions that you gave may be really accurate. But if you didn't involve the salesperson in the process of designing this predictive algorithm that's supposed to be helping them, then it may fail simply at the point of user engagement. It fell on the floor. And so none of that cool work that you did on the data side mattered. And so the question is, whose job is it to make sure that these people actually, they say operationalize. I kind of hate that word, because really it's simple. It's really about a user choosing to use your software solution because it helps them. So you can either intentionally design that, or you can just do the prayer model, which is deploy and pray, which is what I think some businesses do. And then they wonder why they don't, like, what are we spending all this money on? And then there's the two, now I'm here, it's like, you have about 2 years as a senior data leader. You've got about 2 years to show value. And it's like, oh, we're still standing up our private cloud, and that's going to take 3 years. And it's like, now they're out the door. Next guy gal comes in. And it's like, no wonder we're not creating a lot of value in this space. So anyhow, I'm going off on one of my rants here. I think there's a lot of smart people in this. This stuff is hard to get right, but it takes more than data science and analytics skills to build great decision support solutions and data products, and to make it actionable and useful. It's hard, and it takes intentional design. It's not a byproduct of the technology that you build, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you brought up something that kind of made me remember something I've been thinking about for a long time, and would love your opinion on. In that, companies have had data science teams for a long time, and often at least the companies that I've worked in, they've kept them in the basement. And to your point, they've said, okay, we have a very defined thing that we want to figure out. You guys go crunch on it, and then bring us back a binary answer. But we've seen a shift recently in the types of people that we work with in companies. We tend to focus in marketing organizations and in the C-suite, but it seems like they're wanting more of what I've called the data science light, or someone that's less the guy down in the basement, and more someone that has a bit more business rigor and understanding that they can bring to the equation. And in parallel to that, we're also seeing companies like Domo and others that are positioning that in that we can bring data science to the masses, to the everyday technical employee, and give a blend of some of the hardcore stuff, but give it a little softness that comes with business. I'm interested in your opinions as far as, is that a fair observation that, we've had these groups for a long time, but there wasn't necessarily a good overlap with business insights or business understanding, and it's kind of now swung to the other way where we've tried to take a lot of the rigor out of data science and make it more approachable to the everyday business person.
So I do know I just saw something that came through my inbox about, and I've heard this talked about before, where even bringing like predictive models into just something as simple as Excel, which so many business leaders are used to working in, but it's trying to connect some of these technologies to that. At the end of the day, whether you're using Domo or a SaaS product or it's a custom thing, what I hear you saying is those people are saying we need actionable decision support, and we're not getting it from the person in the basement. That's really what they're asking for. And so there's a disconnect there. And that could be a presentation issue. It could be that the data scientist isn't asking the right questions to get at how this information is going to be used. It could be unrealistic expectations of the person requesting the services. But that's partly why I've moved into training now, and I'm actually in the middle of running a new seminar on this, is to try to help people that are familiar with the technology piece to get better at learning how to interface with the business stakeholders, such that you don't spend 6 months building out a model for something that maybe you could have said, here's my recommendation, go buy a $200 a month package at Domo, use this data here, and I think it'll get you a really quick answer. It'll take us 6 months to build something here, but that's a different mentality than like, you told me to build a model, I went and built the model. Here's what it said. It said 82.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's not what someone actually wants, but you have to know how to dig into that. And that's a different skill set to ask the right type of probing questions. And this is why I'm a big fan of, like, human-centered design requires that we do one-on-one research. And this can be done with end users, which may or may not be your business stakeholders. It could be the same person. But you have to ask the right questions to get at why they want this information. Where is it going to break down? Like, what's going to stop them from using it? You guys probably know, like, the Jeff Bezos thing, where it's like, write the press release at the beginning of the project. And I love this mentality as an exercise, because you have to tout what the business outcome was, not just the technology, but like, it's going in the Times or whatever, right? It needs to be basic and clear. What did they do? What that was so innovative and interesting? Another one of those is like, write the disaster press release, right? Like, how did it totally fail? Like, what would we how could we totally screw this up? Like, get the model, get the data analytics part correct, but totally fail to the point someone wrote an article about it. What would that look like? And some of those things are not going to have anything to do with the quality of the technology. It's in the experience of the person that's trying to use it to go do something with it. To, how much should I spend on this campaign? Should I buy it over here? Or should I buy it over there? Like, that kind of stuff, right? That's really what they want. And they may start saying, like, I want to see CPM values per state, per demographic, per whatever. This is where it gets really scary, is the illusion of the requirements document, where someone starts stating all this, and most people can't articulate that stuff in a way that someone else is really going to be able to provide them what they need. They will provide what they asked for, but that's like the going in the doctor and saying, doctor, my arm hurts, please give me a cast. And can you imagine if your doctor is like, yes, I'd be happy to give you a cast, come this way, here's your cast, I hope you enjoy it, and here's the bill. Like, no. Right? Your job is to be a healer. Like, you're a healer. Yeah. You're not a cast maker. So you have to first do the proper discussion and figure out, like, what's needed. And I hope I hope the smart people that are, working on the technology side of this can start thinking, have empathy for the people requesting their services, and realize your shit can, like, break down at a level that has nothing to do with your technical skill set whatsoever. And you can say, that's not my job. Fine. Then, I don't know. I mean, that sounds kind of like a lame job to like go build stuff that no one cares about. Like I would get sick of that if I was a technical person. Like it's so much more fun to work on stuff where they're like, this is so useful. When can I get more? Like, could you work on this other thing? Like, I mean, who wants to work on stuff? I don't know. That's me, I guess, self-reflecting. I don't know about you guys, but like, I want to work on stuff that makes a difference, you know?
I think as people get longer in their careers, that becomes more and more important for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you've kind of been around a while, wanting to spend your time doing stuff that matters becomes much more important than I think for most of us when we were younger in our careers. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so as a designer, how important is it for you to think about the balance of creating a visualization layer that helps to simplify very, very complex things with ensuring that, well, is it important that we help ensure that there is some rigor behind it and we're not just pulling a number out of a model that may or may not make sense? Is from a design perspective, is it important to help the end user understand that there is some validity to the data and it's just not a pretty number that we're putting into an interface?
So, eh, yes. Well, that wasn't a binary question. So let me unpack that for a second. I think there are definitely designers out there who will say like, okay, the requirement was like take this chart and make it look nice and figure out how to lay it out, and so they do exactly that. That is not product design. That's not human-centered design. That's graphic design. That's a different skill set. It's important to get the visual part right. But what you just told me there is that as a user, I don't just need the prediction, but I also need some evidence about how you came up with that in this particular case. So we need to the full design is figuring out the needs and the problem that need to be solved, and the surface layer, the output of the work, is the visualization or the GUI or the UX or whatever it may be. Those are outputs, right? But I would consider that integral to the design, is understanding how much stuff you need there. So I have a framework that I call the CED framework for this, which is conclusions, evidence, data, and it's kind of like this pyramid, right? And so as a general rule, focus on the conclusion part. Think about stage 2 as evidence, and you have to talk to customers to understand the right balance of evidence and overload, because they may, in this case, they may need to know what, for example, model transparency, right? Like which of the features in the model corresponded highly to this prediction. I don't need to know everything about it, but if I'm going to decline the classic example like loan, right? Do I give a loan or not to Jim to go out and like create a Red Sox Fenway Park in his backyard scale model? Should I give him
Wait,
that loan or not?
he's a Philly fan, so he probably doesn't even want the loan.
Okay, a flaming one, a flaming Fenway Park. But the point is, like, you can't just say like, don't give Jim the model and that's the answer, end of story, right? This is now you're getting to compliance issues, right? So that's a different kind of requirement. But you can see a place where it's like, well, how did you come up with this? Like, I got to go have a discussion with someone, and you can't just give me this number. And so that design process is very much about balancing, like, how much evidence do I provide? And sometimes the evidence is like, in some of these, for example, these analytical monitoring applications I've built, the evidence is sometimes things like, when you're troubleshooting, tell me what stuff you already checked, and maybe tell me what stuff you didn't check, because I don't know exactly what your software is looking at. I know it's like your thing's like wired into my whole infrastructure, and it's like I don't remember during the sales pitch, like, how many are you monitoring the CPU and the memory swap and the ballooning? Like, I don't know. Right? So it's, what stuff did I check? What stuff did I not check? So that the end user can then decide about, how much do I believe this? Do I need to maybe go do some level 2 analysis, which maybe says like, I need to run this by my boss before I make a buying decision, or whatever it may be. That's all the design part, right? Figuring out that balance between signal and noise, or conclusion and evidence. And then at the lowest level there is kind of the data, which is a generic way of saying, in some cases, you need to provide access to what could be a lot of information. So if you imagine stuff, this is where your huge tables with tons of columns of data, which typically are not very human parsable whatsoever, but there are times where you may need to go down to that level and see that information. Not always, definitely not always, but I do like to think of it in terms of those tiers. Sometimes having in design, we have this thing called, the mobile first mentality. And sometimes I'll recommend that to clients. It's like, even if your solution's not going to be used on a phone regularly, what would you present in a phone capacity if you had to? Because you have to limit the choices, right? And it really starts to make you focus on what that signal is. Even if you're not going to, be providing a mobile-oriented solution, which you probably should be doing, but it does depend. Not everything is suitable for that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And I just pulled up your framework on your site. We'll definitely link that up in the show notes because I think there's some really, really interesting things to think about from a framework perspective here. And the reason that I bring it up is, I see it as a challenge for a lot of the companies that we work with, the individuals at companies that we work with, is that where do I find the right balance in that pendulum swing to be able to present my insights? And if they're too far to one side, the feedback from the executive is often, get out of here with your nerd speak. We don't, we need to understand what this means to the business. What does this actually mean? And then if you swing too far to the other side, the same group of executives may very easily come back and say, but well, wait a minute, we need some evidence of what you're saying here. We can't just have your summary here. So finding that balance is something that I think a lot of the people that we work with struggle with. And I'm not sure that there's a right or a specific answer for everyone, but at least having some kind of a structured framework for how to think through that, I think can be very beneficial.
Yeah, no, I definitely hope that's useful. And there's also, I have a free guide. It's a self-assessment guide for products using analytics. So it's the kind of mentality there is to go through it, and it forces you to ask some questions from kind of the perspective of a designer looking at an analytics product, and it can, it might be able to help in a similar capacity, kind of figure out, am I doing it right? Is my design good? If you're not talking to an end customer, which is much better than reading a guide and going through it yourself. But if you're not doing that, it's a great kind of high level pass to understand that. So, and the other thing I think I would say to what you just said, Jason, is and this is something that technical people have to get comfortable with, and it's something I talked a lot about in my training. Design is messy, and it's all about gray. It's not black and white. It's not like when you're building a data product or something like this, there's actually not a pot of gold out there. There's pots of gold all over the place. So don't feel like, is it right or not? Did I get to it? Because there's several different possibilities. There's not one possibility. So the goal is like, find a good one. It doesn't have to be the only one. But this stuff is messy, and it's all about living in the gray area. Like you said, how much conclusion versus evidence? There is no binary answer for that. It depends on who is seeing this. Is it an executive? Is it an expert? Is it like someone that speaks your language that wants the evidence? Is it another data person? They probably want to understand your protocol and like all the stuff that you went through. An executive probably doesn't. Give me the highlights. What does it mean? Maybe someone below that will say, okay, that's great. We do want to get some evidence to back this up. Like, what did you do? Did you check this? Did you check that? And that's a different conversation, but there's no one right answer. So you have to get comfortable with this gray area. And so I think that's why there's so much stuff now in the whole storytelling space, for people working in analytics that are primarily delivering an ad hoc presentation or a static document that's telling information. I kind of don't like the storytelling as a thing, because it makes it sound like I'm supposed to go tell a story, and you could still tell the wrong story, but it's a story. Like it misses a little bit of something for me. I understand where it's coming from in terms of helping communicate the findings, and that's not my area of expertise. I focus more on delivering the story within a software product that has to tell the story on its own innately, right? It doesn't have the benefit of nice slides with a narrator and someone to ask questions, like to actually, bounce questions off of. It's a different kind of medium. But I think, not to toss all of storytelling out, but really it's about figuring out what the recipient needs and being really tied into that and rooted in empathy so that whatever your output is, it resonates with that person. It doesn't, whether it's PDF or mobile app or whatever the delivery mechanism is, right? It doesn't really matter. A deck, if you haven't talked to those people, it's maybe a swing and a miss. I like to get ahead of that. You can even go out with fake data, early on. And I think even like with predictive models, for example, there are techniques for testing, like such as the Wizard of Oz test, which, if you imagine something like you're working on a conversational interface, aka a chat bot, you can learn a lot as to what you need in your chatbot by simply having a real human on the other side of the chatbot responding to the inputs of the person. And so what you're doing there is trying to understand what kinds of stuff are they inputting into the system. You don't need to build any NLP system whatsoever to start to understand where your chatbot may fail. Like, wow, if we don't know how to model an apple, and this person is talking about apples all day long, this thing is going to fail because we're getting a lot of inquiries about apples, right? You don't need to build a model to figure that out. You need to understand what someone's likely to type into this tool and want to get information out of there. So my point here is that if it's possible to prototype what your solution might look like early and get feedback on it, it may save you a lot of work later on. So it's kind of weird, and you don't always get that chance, right? If you get the one shot to present your findings to the executive team, you may not get that chance to go do a practice round with a pseudo deck. And it's like, we're really here to practice the run through of the presentation with fake data, but we want to know what types of questions you're going to ask us so that we can come back and actually deliver it with the real data when we get to it. That's a design thinking, applied to the static delivery format, I guess, instead of software.
Yeah. Side note, I was the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz back when I thought I wanted to be a thespian.
Sweet.
So,
Sweet. How was that?
It was fun. The theater card got a little too weird for me, though.
They're still weird. I work with theater people all the time.
They're great people, but I could not hang on that level.
By the way, did you hear, there was arsenic or asbestos or something in the paint in the original version of that? There's some funny story about how I think the paint or one of those outfits it was basically poisonous.
Oh my gosh.
I recently read something about that. I thought it was kind of fun. I mean, probably not funny for the family of the person.
Definitely. If there were long-term impacts there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long enough, maybe we can laugh at it now. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I did have a question. So a lot of our listeners, they're tasked with doing consumer behavior analytics. So they're being asked questions like, why are so many people following out in our checkout flow? Why are so many of our customers buying low ticket items, but there seems to be anxiety around buying high ticket items? What can someone in that space learn from someone that has taken a more product centric approach to designing analytics? And is there any overlap there that they can learn from a little bit different of a discipline?
Yeah, that's those types of kind of ad hoc queries about those, why is X happening, and the answer is Y. That's a little outside of my space. But if I was to come in with that, with my particular hat on and think about that in more of an ad hoc analytics type of project, I'd be wondering, what are you going to do with the information? What are you going to do with the answer? And I want to kind of work it backwards from that, so I know approximately how much evidence and decision support do I need to provide to you so that you believe that. Do you need to see the checkout flow in order to believe that everyone is failing on the checkout page? Or is it enough to just tell you, it's failing here, there's a lot of bouncing between product images, and then they exit or whatever? Great, but what are you going to do with that information? I want to unpack that so that I can provide the right amount of evidence to support the next thing that they're going to do. and it may not be like, I'm not trying to like solve the next thing, but I want to anticipate it so that the information I give them is as close to actionable as possible at the time I deliver it to them, and it's not ask for more information, or they're kind of like not trusting it, especially if it's like a surprise finding, right? Like it's not either what they wanted to hear, or they're having a really hard time believing the information that's there. I'd want to have the right kinds of questioning with them about how they're going to use the data or the information as early as possible, so I can support the findings that way. And I understand that may not be possible. You're like, we have no idea why people are bouncing off the site because we haven't done any work whatsoever. But you could ask something like, well, how do you take action on a project like this? Like, do you send this to someone else to do some further testing on it? Do you have to sell this to a boss? And oh yeah, I have to get my sign off from my, the CMO has to sign off on it. Well, what would it take for the CMO to believe that this is real? Like, are they a data person? Are they more of a story person? Would it be better to show an example? Like, we found some data that says people bounce around the images, go to the checkout page, and then leave, or whatever it may be. Would showing them a video of someone doing that's actually frustrating. Like if we went out and tested a couple people to validate that our quantitative data was right, maybe that kind of emotional story would help them believe and sell it. Or maybe they know that and they need to sell it to someone, right? So now it's like, we already know what's wrong. We know it's bad. We know the checkout is busted. We know the images suck, but our CEO is not going to spend money to fix it until he sees it. Like, that's a whole different thing, right? You might cut down your analysis time and focus on the story and the emotional pain and watching someone struggle, right? Watching a customer struggle in a usability study, validating I have 100,000 points that reflect exactly what this one person on the video camera is doing times 100,000. That is what's going on right now. That's a powerful way to inspire change. In any company that's selling services to human beings, is watching them suffer or hate your product or talk about what's wrong with it. It's such a powerful thing, and I think everybody should be doing that if you're building products and services. Is get out there and into the field, do ride-along studies, shadow your customers if you can, bring them in to do testing. It sheds a lot of light on stuff that you're never going to get in analytics. Because analytics aren't going to tell you why, right? They're not going to say why they did this thing. They show you the click path and all this kind of stuff. You have no color for the journey, right? Like I reluctantly went through and bought your thing. You won't see the reluctance. Maybe, I don't know, maybe now they can model reluctance. I would want to know though if people are reluctantly buying my product, like, because that says like at some point maybe it's going to end. Like, I don't know. I would want to know that if I was selling widgets.
Well, that's great counsel. No, absolutely. What types of things are you keeping an eye on as far as the future of product analytics?
When you say product analytics, you're talking about analytics for
analytics in product analytics?
I wouldn't say I have any particular eye specifically on product analytics, but I think one thing companies are trying to do right now is figure out what value-added services can you add to a product that may use data, right? And so it's not necessarily monetizing data that comes from the product, but it could be providing some type of data solution that goes with the product, right? So it's like, Nike has the sensor in its shoes, and now you have analytics on your running, and it's like they've connected the physical product to some type of analytics and decision support that can help you overall with sports and in your training and that type of thing. So I think people are wondering about this, and I don't know if you guys follow, like, Gartner puts out its chief data officer model every year, and the version 4 model just came out, and it's all about product, right? And getting off of kind of this project mentality and the IT side of it, but really thinking about product. And I think that's really interesting, right? It's thinking about not just like analytics in terms of how do we, find operational excellence that we can fit, problems in our supply chain and all these kinds of stuff. That's fine, but some of the big wins come when you can bring new services. And so I think people are trying to figure out how do we do that, and that's that's a tough thing, right? And I worry a little bit about like some places' approach is just going to be like work it backwards from the data. Like let's make up use cases from the data that we have, which I think is kind of a backwards way, but I'm sure that's informing some of it, right? Because people are like, here's all the sand. What can we build with the sand? Can we make a castle? Like, I don't know. Like, it so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's good. So, if you could only recommend one, well, what if someone wanted to pick up a book about data, design, strategy, what would you recommend?
Oh gosh, are you really gonna
I'm
put me
going
on the
to.
spot to pick one?
Yes. Uh,
I can't, because then what happens is you rattle off a whole bunch. So like,
and then someone's
I'm
gonna get mad and it's like, wait, you should have said this.
no, I mean, I honestly, I don't. There's no one book that I think about with this stuff, because there's like when people say design, some people are thinking about data visualization, and so and then some people are thinking about storytelling with data, which is the name of Cole's book and her whole company, and Tufte's, of course, the classic for data visualization stuff, which is more than probably a lot of people working in day-to-day analytics need on a regular basis. So I'm more right now, like, for example, I'm reading Doug Laney's book called Infonomics. I've been reading Future Ethics, which is Kenneth Bull's book on kind of ethics from a designer's perspective in the AI space, because I think that's looking kind of at human-centered design in a broad context. And then actually I just went at Harvard Business School just yesterday or 2 days ago. There was a book release there, competing in the age of AI, which I'm really looking forward to getting into that book. Are you guys familiar with that text that just came out?
I am not.
Okay, yeah. So it's Kareem Lakhani and Marco Iancidi wrote that, and
Oh wait,
Kareem runs
what?
the
Did I just read
Harvard
one of his
Business
books?
Analytics program.
That name sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
Is he an economist?
I believe he's the dean. He's a professor and he's a dean in the Harvard Business School. And
Okay.
I think he chairs the
His name sounds so
HBAP
familiar.
program, Harvard Business Analytics program, or whatever it's called. I forget the name of it. So
Got it. Okay, I'll have to check that out.
yeah. So that's I'm interested in that space, and obviously everyone's interested in these technologies, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can keep people at the center of these technologies and services. There's so much value they can bring, but there's also things that they can do wrong, and maybe we'll learn differently than we have. You look at large scale things like what happened with Facebook and Twitter and social media, with some of the negative sides of what these large scale systems create over the long term, unintended effects, right? And so I kind of wonder, what is the 10-year out version of that look like with AI? And we know all the famous ethical examples of what can be done wrong with AI, but I part of the reason I'm on this mission to bring human-centered design into this space is because I think it matters, and I don't want to live in that kind of place. And if I can help really talented technical people and product people to really build empathy and humanize the work that they're doing, and just getting them in a room and talking to a customer and understanding their fears around, even if they're totally irrational fears, but understanding how your work fits into their life, and you're just like, this is so basic. I mean, it's a basic machine learning model. All it does is this or whatever. And they're like picturing this Terminator. You're going to end my job. You're going to my job's going away. And what else are you guys crafting down there in the basement with the PhDs? Like, just building that empathy and helping them understand like what you're doing and the value you're providing, and how all that stuff I think is really important. I don't know. I just
I love that. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Last question. What's your all-time favorite Broadway musical?
You know what's really funny? So I play a lot of shows, and I rarely ever see shows, and I've played so many shows that I've never seen it. I have the experience of a blind person going to a show. I really do, because I hear the shows. On average, I'll play when a run happens, it's about 8 shows a week. So
Wow.
I'm doing another Mamma Mia coming up in a couple months, and that'll be 16 shows over 2 weeks.
crazy.
Never have seen anything except actors backstage, so I really have no idea what's going on because they don't give us monitors in the pit because we're down in the
Right.
pit most of the time. So,
Right.
so because I'm playing them a lot, I tend to not go to the shows too much. But I do. I loved Book of Mormon. I thought that was highly entertaining. And what was the one with the puppets? It was a little bit. It was a little bit obscene. There's
Avenue Q.
Avenue Q.
Yeah, I think I saw it like 10 years ago, 12 years ago when
Yeah.
it was here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so those were entertaining, but because I'm playing a lot of it, I tend not to go out to the shows too much just because it gets it's just I don't know.
Fair
I'm
enough.
more of a concert type person, but I enjoy playing the shows and do that more.
So what's your favorite show you've played?
My favorite show that I've played, to be honest, one of the most fun shows I did was the national tour of Motown was going through about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was just great because it really went through the whole era. It was like playing a gig, like a bar gig, but like in the context of a whole Broadway musical. The arrangements were super tight. They had a huge band, so there was very little like electronics or backing tracks or any of that.
Yeah.
The cast was awesome. Great singers. The little Michael Jackson they had two children played the role of little Michael Jackson, and just finding even someone that can get close to Michael Jackson, and hearing that every night was really great. So there's such a laid back, fun, just a groove type gig. So that's probably one of the most fun ones I've done.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Very cool. Well, Brian, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think lots of really good nuggets of guidance and counsel that our listeners can walk away with, and we'll definitely link up some of the resources that you mentioned. But really appreciate you stopping by and having a chat with us. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, good. Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope hope it's useful, and feel free to check out Designing for Analytics, and I'm easy to reach on there. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll link everything up. And it was a great conversation. When you and I had first chatted, I kind of envisioned something a little bit different, and of course we kind of get started and go off in a different direction. But
33 tangents.
Exactly. That's exactly why we named it Tangents, because we just go off in all different ways. And I think kind of on the fly, it turned out better than I could have expected. So yeah, definitely appreciate the time.
Definitely. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on here to share my thoughts.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys. We'll go ahead and wrap up here, and we'll talk to everybody later.
Sounds good. Yeah, let me know when it drops, and I'll
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of 33 Tangents. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast aggregator so others can find us. If you would like to reach us, you can do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at 33tangents.33sticks.com. 33 Tangents is a production of 33 Sticks, an analytics boutique.